Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be doing a little bit of a Bible study today, um, because last night I actually was rereading through the Olivet Discourse. I was reading Mark 13, so Mark's account of it, and I wanted to kind of go through it line by line to see if we can't prove that all these things did happen. And when I say all these things, I'm specifically looking at what is this verse 26. The Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. So we can see that everything was fulfilled in the generation that Jesus was speaking to. Then I think we can kind of say that, hey, maybe this coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory did also happen. So there's going to be a little bit of a different video. So sit back, relax, see if you learn anything. If you want to take notes, if you want to write something in the comments, if you think I'm wrong about certain things. Um, I'm always open to different interpretations, but this is just how what I've come to in my studies here. So, yeah, let's get right into the Bible. So I got my notebook here, so I'm going to be reading from this, and we're going to go line by line. So, and as he went out of the temple, one of his disciples saith unto him, Master, see what manner of stones and what buildings are here. So they're quite literally looking at the temple, which was in Jerusalem, and they're saying, look at how beautiful this is. Look at these stones. Look at these massive structures. Probably looking at the walls, the details, all the little intricacies of it, and they're literally admiring how beautiful it is. Because I mean, doing architecture myself, I mean, it was probably a very beautiful structure, right? So they're giving some praise to it. And Jesus answering said unto him, Seest thou these great buildings? There shall not be one stone left upon another that shall not be thrown down. So he's saying that this building that you're looking at, this beautiful structure, will be utterly, completely destroyed, brick by brick, stone by stone. It will be unrecognizable. It will be utterly obliterated. There's no other way to describe it. And we know that by 70 A.D. that the temple was tossed down brick by brick. People say that the Western Wall is like, oh, it clearly wasn't destroyed. But that's not the temple. That's like a retaining wall. That's not the temple. The temple itself is gone, and that's pretty widely understood. So that came true. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives over against the temple, notice here it says Peter and James and John and Andrew asked him privately. So this is a private conversation that we're getting a glimpse of with four of the disciples. So it's not some, like open market thing or whatever Jesus would do back then. This is a private conversation. So they ask him, tell us, when shall these things be? So when is it going to happen? When is this thing going to get destroyed? And what shall be the sign when these things shall be fulfilled? So, like, what is the sign of, like, so we know to be like, hey, it's going to happen. And when is it going to happen? Right? And I think we'll see that by verse 30, he gives the time. And verse, I guess you could say, 5 to 29 is the signs. So he kind of answers them backwards. Um, so Jesus began to answer them and said, take heed lest any man deceive you. So a warning to not be deceived. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and shall deceive many. So we do have examples of this. So in 44 AD, Theudas, he claimed to be able to divide the Jordan River. And so when he went to the Jordan River and he couldn't do it, kind of like a Red Sea kind of thing, basically the Romans executed him. Judas the Galilean, he was viewed as a messianic figure. He helped to lead a revolt against Rome. So, research these figures. We have, even in the book of Acts, the Egyptian Jew in chapter 21. He gathered roughly 30,000 followers as a messianic figure. And other insurgents, I mean, just read through Josephus. I believe it's his book, Antiquities of the Jews. And I think that's the book. There's two, and then there's I think it's literally called The Jews, where basically people would claim to be the Messiah and get people to follow them into the woods, and basically they would rob them there. That's partially why I believe in Matthew's account of this. They said he's in the wilderness, don't follow him. He's in the inner chambers, don't go. Like because they would go and rob you. Um, so that was fulfilled. First century, we have many different people coming. I mean, even I believe it's Second Peter, um, chapter 2 or chapter 3. Let me get this up so I can give you the verse. I believe it's Second Peter. Yeah, Second Peter chapter 2 verse 1. Also mentions false teachers. Um, so yeah, we have that. And when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be ye not troubled, for such things must needs be, but the end shall not be yet. So you're gonna hear of. I mean, obviously we have the Roman Jewish War in 66 to 70 A.D. Um, like you're gonna hear of all these uprisings. You're gonna hear of these revolts. You're gonna hear of all this calamity. Yeah, it's scary, but that's not the end. Like that's just the beginning, right? For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Kind of going along the same thing. Bug, you're meowing too much. Sorry, that's my cat. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes. Here, Bug, come here. And there shall be earthquakes in divers places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. So, to break this down for the earthquakes, we know in Laodicea, in one of the churches in Revelation, in 60 AD, they had an earthquake, and they were rebuilding. So we see that in Revelation chapter 3. We also see major earthquakes in Crete, Smyrna, Hierapolis, Colossae, Rome, Pompeii, Judea, and this is just to name a few. There was many others. So like obviously we see like Pompeii leveled in 63 AD. But just know that all of these earthquakes are prior to 70 AD. Famines, um, starting in 41 AD, there was massive famines in the land. It was literally 4 seasons where the crops, weren't really cropping. Um, so there were people were dying from lack of food, obviously. Also, we see in 68 A.D. prior to the destruction of Jerusalem, when the Romans cut off the food supply. Um, like Rome surrounded Jerusalem, cut off their food supply, and people were starving to death. Basically, every house that the Romans would go in, there'd be like dead bodies of people just starved to death. It was to the point where there's literally that story, Josephus accounts of a mother literally eating her baby for being starved so much. Um, yeah, it's kind of a brutal time. Um, and then for the pestilences, I think this one says troubles. Yeah, this one says troubles. Matthew says pestilence. I think Luke also says pestilence. Pestilence, trouble, same thing. Depends how you want to word it. I mean, you could just say that it's the political and social turmoil leading up to the Roman Jewish War, especially with Nero kind of burning Christians at as torches. I mean, that kind of yeah. Um, I mean, yeah. So verse 8 fulfilled, first century before 70 A.D. All right. So, but take heed for yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to councils, and in the synagogues ye shall be beaten, and ye shall be brought before rulers and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them. I mean, I could literally just point you to the book of Acts. I mean, that's Acts is literally describing this. Um, Paul was the one who, well, Saul, I guess you could say, was beating and killing Christians. Um, if you want to go look up specific verses, go to Acts 5:18, Acts 7:58 to 60, Acts chapter 8 verse 3, Acts 14:2, Acts, and just read chapter 23 and 24. Um, like just the whole thing. Um, yeah, I mean we literally see the martyrdom, I believe, of James in the book of Acts, the martyrdom of Stephen. So, verse 9 fulfilled pre 70 A.D. Even noted in the Bible itself. And the gospel first must be published among all nations. Um, this is interesting. So obviously we see in Colossians 1:23 and Romans chapter 1 verses 8 through 10, Paul notes that this already happened. But what I want to do is look at that all nations, because the Greek word here for all nations is ethne or ethne. I'm not sure how to say it. It's a Greek word. which basically means like pagan, like Gentiles, pretty much. Like this, basically, you could be translate this verse instead of "and the gospel must be first published among all nations" to "and the gospel must be first be preached to the pagan Gentiles." Like that's basically what it's saying. Like you could say like the pagan Gentile nations, like basically Rome. Um, and from what I can see, the King James version never anywhere else translates this to anything else but unbelieving Gentiles. And the Strong's Concordance generally says um, that that this is generally translated as a multitude living together. So basically, a foreign pagan nation. Um, and it's kind of crazy because Paul even uses this same exact word when he describes Gentile Christians. Basically, anybody who's not a Jew. So this is basically saying that the gospel must first be preached to the Gentiles. Is like a very basic way of translating that, and I believe that that happened. And Paul notes that it happened, and he was a minister of it happening. That's getting into a little bit different of the more conspiratorial side, but I believe that the world was literally one landmass at this time, and then when we see the final bowl or wrath of judgment being that massive earthquake, I believe it's Revelation 16 or whatever, or maybe 17. Um, that is when now we have the split land masses like we have today, but that's a different video for another day. Um, when they get persecuted, um, next verse, but when they shall lead you and deliver you up, take no thought beforehand what ye shall speak, neither do ye premeditate. But whatsoever shall be given to you in that hour, shall that speak ye, for it is not ye that speak, but the Holy Ghost. Basically, again, same thing as verse 9. That's the book of Acts. And then again, the Holy Ghost is the one speaking. Again, this is a testimony given to the pagan, like Gentiles, to basically hear the gospel. Um, which is another way that it would, spread to Rome. And we see that Rome was a pretty big hotspot for, first and second century Christianity to, um, spread. It's kind of interesting. We see that there's this massive persecution of Christianity, and then all of a sudden they're like, maybe we'll be Christians, right? Like I wonder what would cause them to just all of a sudden switch to Christianity. Um, maybe Jesus came back and they was ruling with a rod of iron. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Verse 12. Now the brother shall betray the brother to death, and the father the son, and children shall rise up against their parents, and shall cause them to be put to death. Um, yeah, I mean that's just snitching on each other to save their own skin. This is widely documented in between 66 and 70 AD. Even a little bit, you could say from 64 to 70 AD, to a lesser extent. Really big time. Read Josephus again. He's the number one authority, I would think, on most of this. He's not even a Christian. 64 to 66 is really when we see this kind of happen. So again, verses 1 through 12 fulfilled pre 70 or up to 70 AD. So first century fulfillments there. Um, and ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. So again, notice he's saying, you shall be hated of all men. Um, so he's literally talking to his disciples again. So again, especially under first century Rome, with Nero, he's really systematically persecuting Christians, especially after the fire of Rome in 64 AD. Um, yeah, Christians were literally systematically hunted down and killed. So again, kind of what he's hinting at there. And it says, but when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains. So we know from Luke chapter 21, verses 20 and 21, that this is speaking of Jerusalem being surrounded by the pagan Roman armies. Interesting to think about. So when they see basically when they see Jerusalem surrounded by the Roman armies, flee to the mountains, which we see that in 66 AD when Rome initially surrounded Jerusalem. The believers who got, I guess you could say, a divine inspiration and heeded the warning of Jesus, fled to Pella for the duration of the war, and they were protected there. I believe that's kind of what Revelation 12 is also hinting at the 3.5 years they were protected in the wilderness. Um, but what's interesting here, and I want to make another note to connect this, when you go back and you read Luke chapter 17, and this kind of applies to verse 15 here as well. They're kind of saying the same thing. Um, and 16. So 14 and 16 are basically describing 66 AD, fleeing to the woods, not looking back. Remember Lot's wife. I believe Matthew says, remember Lot's wife, for she looked back and she was turned into a pillar of salt. Um, this is kind of saying the same thing, like just flee, just trust in Jesus, just trust what he said. Don't look back. Don't even go for a coat, just because you're gonna get caught offhand if you look back, right? Well, Luke 17, verse 30 and 31 says that during this time, when people are fleeing from their housetops to the wilderness, that is the day when the Son of Man will be revealed. Um, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Go read it for yourself if you don't believe me. That's the day when the Son of Man will be revealed. Um, so, I mean, I don't. I mean, that's red letters, dude. I can't. I'm not gonna go against what Jesus said. If he says that this, and we know that this is talking about 66 AD when they fled to Pella. I mean, there's no real way around it. So, um, take that how you want. If you don't believe that Jesus already returned, kind of, it's gonna be hard to refute that. You got to say this is a dual fulfillment. I'm not seeing that, but maybe, maybe it's a dual fulfillment if that's how you wanna make yourself sleep better at night. I just trust what Jesus says. But woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. Um, So I obviously it's saying it's going to be very hard for mothers in those days, especially those who are um breastfeeding and whatnot, to like leave with your children and make sure you have everything. Obviously that's going to be hard. I also kind of wonder if this is like double dipping in a way, because Paul basically says to stay as you are, don't get married, don't do this. So if you're breastfeeding in those days, then obviously you were having kids, you were doing whatever. So maybe it's kind of a little bit like, hey, should have listened to Paul. I mean, I'm not saying that that's what Jesus is saying, but maybe you're getting a little bit of hint of that. You know what I mean? Um, where they didn't basically listen, and they didn't take the precaution to not have kids, and then they had kids, and now they have to possibly witness them get killed and whatnot. Um, yeah, interesting. I don't know if that's exactly what he's saying, but that's what I kind of can gather from that. But do your own research if you disagree. I'm not dogmatic about that. It's kind of interesting to think about. Verse 18, and pray that your flight be not in the winter. And Matthew's account, and I believe Luke's account also, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I know Matthew for sure says, or on the Sabbath day. Reason for that is because on the Sabbath day and in the winter, the gates of the city would be shut. And basically, so like if the Romans surround the city in the winter, you'd kind of be locked in, and you would suffer the same fate as the people who were there to get the judgment. So Jesus is saying, pray that doesn't happen, so you're not basically locked in there with them, right? Basically, sheep being led to the slaughter. And then look at this. For in those days, we're going to break this down deep. For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of the creation, which God created unto this time, and neither shall be. This is what people widely consider to be called the tribulation. Some people say it's 7 years. I think it's 3.5 years. Um, However long it is, you be the judge. I think this is literally saying 66 to 70, 80, 3.5 years, times in the dividing of time, 1,260 days, 42 months. That's what I think that's talking about. Let's break it down. First says, in those days, and the days that he's referring to is the days when they have to flee, the days when they see Rome surrounding the armies. Those days, which happened in 66 AD, are going to be the worst time since the beginning of creation, and neither shall be. And you're like, wait a second, dude. Didn't World War One have like 90 million deaths, brother? Yeah, it did. You're not reading the context, though. Luke's account makes it the most clear, but he's talking about Jacob's trouble. That's Jeremiah 30, verse 7. It's upon this people. He's talking about to the Jews. He's saying this is going to be the worst time for the Jews, and it will never be equaled again. And he's speaking about in Jerusalem. That's what he's talking about. And notice here, and except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved, but for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, the chosen people, his first century people. Read James chapter 1. I mean, just read the whole book of James, honestly. Read Revelation chapter 5. Read Revelation chapter 14. This is the 144,000, I think he's talking about, from the 12 tribes who are... Oh, sorry, somebody's at the door. These are from the 12 tribes, and these are the elect. Um, very interesting. That for their sake, he will shorten the days. So basically, he's saying, I mean, when you think about it, this time was basically um, people were dying from starvation, from the famines, and obviously from the Romans taking everything out. Um, and people say that at the second coming, like everybody's wiped out or something. Like, no, people literally survive the tribulation. Like, there's gonna be people who make it out of this thing, or made it out of this thing, because I believe it's a past event in Jerusalem. And I believe when you read Luke's account, he says, "Wrath upon the land and upon this people," which makes it very clear he's talking about the first century Jews. Um, but don't just take my word for it. Go read Luke 21, go read Matthew 24, and read this side by side, and you'll see what I'm saying. And if any man shall say to you, "Lo, here is Christ," this is what I was talking about earlier, or "Lo, he is there," believe him not. This is, again, Josephus writes about people robbing people in the woods. So he's warning them, don't follow them in the woods. They're just going to rob you, maybe kill you, beat you, whatever they're going to do. For false Christ and false prophets shall rise and shall show signs of wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect. There was a guy. What was his name? I'm going to have to figure this out, but there was like a sorcerer who people literally thought, I think his name was literally Jesus too. I could be wrong. I'll plug it in the comments down below when I find it. But people literally thought he was Jesus. He was literally like a witch. And it was like obviously very believable. He would like levitate or something, if I remember right. So I got to brush up on that, but maybe that's what he's talking about here. And then Jesus says, "But take ye heed, behold, I have foretold you all things." He's saying, I'm giving you all the warnings. This is all the signs. It's gonna be, basically he's telling them it's gonna be unmistakable. Like you won't, like, you'll know when this is happening. I know when you read Second Thessalonians, they're like, "Oh, the day of the Lord already happened." Jesus is saying, "No, you will know when the day of the Lord happens." There's no mistake in this, brother. Again, but in those days, so again, the same days, all this stuff is happening, which happened in the first century. So those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. So, I mean, when we read Revelation chapter 12, I believe the stars of heaven falling is literally Satan swiping a third of the stars, which I believe is the fallen angels, who he takes to earth with him. And then verse 24 is one I'm not entirely sure about, if this is meant to be taken literally or symbolically. Currently, I'm kind of taking this as symbolically, just based on the preface of audience relevance. I have the verse written down here. When you read, obviously, Joel 2 is speaking of the day of the Lord. But Isaiah 13:10 uses very similar language to this to describe the destruction of Babylon. So I'm kind of wondering if this is basically saying that after this whole, fiasco happens, Jerusalem will be absolutely destroyed. The temple will be absolutely destroyed. And, you know, that is, when Satan falls, and it'll be unmistakable, right? Like, I think that's what he's kind of getting at here. Just go back and read Isaiah 13, and verse 10 is what I'm looking at there. So I believe that is symbolic of quite literally just the destruction of the powers that be. Obviously, we know from Revelation 17:18 that Mystery Babylon is Jerusalem. This is a first century fulfillment. I believe, at least, that that's what John the Revelator was writing about, but you can come to your own conclusions. And then this, verse 26, I did a whole breakdown of this, so we're gonna go to it. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and glory. So this is, I think it's quite literally a physical second coming. The shall they see. Right here, this word, I have it written down in the Greek is apostai. It's 3708. And the proper definition is to stare at, to physically look at. So it's you're seeing something physical. It's not a to perceive, or it's not a to understand. It's a to look at with your eyes and see what is happening. So they will literally physically see the Son of Man coming on the clouds, right? So it seems like once this thing's destroyed, then will they see this thing. Then they'll see the Son of Man, and he basically comes in to wipe out the rest of them, right? That's kind of what I get from Revelation 19. Um, if you want to look at other examples, John 19:37 uses the same word apostai to describe they will look on the one whom they have pierced, which is them physically looking at Jesus, the guy that they pierced on the cross. Um, and it's also the same word used in Revelation 1:7, where it says they will see him, even those that pierced him. So interesting, and to me this only makes sense to write about someone that they're physically seeing coming. It doesn't make sense for it to be a spiritual thing. It makes sense to be a physical thing. And then we see verse 27, and then shall he send his angels and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven. So basically, his angels are going to gather his elect from all the scattered places. We read in James 1 and Revelation 14 that these are from the 12 tribes who were scattered. So I believe that's literally who he's talking about. I mean, just read James 1 chapter, like just the whole chapter. And, I mean, I guess you could stop at verse 18, but I would just read the whole book of James. It's only like 5 chapters. And I believe that's who he's talking about. And when he says from the four winds, that just means from far places, from like the four cardinal directions, from north, south, east, and west. Basically, he's saying from everywhere. And then we get to verse 28 and 29. Learn the parable of the fig tree. When her branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So he's saying to the disciples, the first century people, in like manner, when you shall see these things, he's saying you're going to see these things come to pass. Know that it is nigh, near, about to happen, even at the doors. So when you start to see, the persecutions, the false Christ, everything, time, ramp it up, dude, because this tribulation is going to be kicking off. And again, first century people, they would know. And I think it's kind of interesting too, because even Luke's gospel tells them before the Son of Man comes, look up, for your redemption draws near. Why would he tell them to look up, lift your heads? Like, oh, Jesus is not coming. Like why would they do that? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. Or maybe Jesus was saying, look up because you're going to see me. Maybe that's what makes more sense to the first century people. Here's the verse. Put this one on a notebook. Verily I say unto you that this generation shall not pass till all, not some, not everything, but the second coming, everything. He says all things be done. Yeah, let God be true and every man a liar. I'm just trusting what Jesus says here. He's saying the people he's talking to, he's talking unto you. There's no other way. I can't see this being, even if you want to say that it's the generation that sees these things, beautiful. They're the generation that saw these things. I think we're kind of proving that right now. I'm literally going verse by verse, and they're checking off every box. But yeah, I mean, then we can just finish up here. I mean, it's pretty quick here. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father only. I mean, yeah, if he's saying this, say, in 30 AD, just to give a date, and this happens in 66 AD to 70, so like roughly 40 years later, he's like, yeah, I can't tell you it's going to be June 2nd, 66. Like, he's like, but you'll know the times and the season, right? Take heed, watch and pray, for you not know when the time is. Again, you'll know the season, but you won't know the exact day. So, don't be caught. For the Son of Man is a man taking a far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants. So he left his house, his church, went back up to heaven for a little bit, gave authority to his servants, his apostles, the first century people, and to every man his work. So that's them spreading the gospel, and commanded the porter or the doorman to watch, because he's going to be coming back. He's not going to say, and he commanded the doorman to watch, and then the doorman's son, and then his son, and then his son, and then his son, and then his son. No, he's the one watching. Watch you, therefore, for you know what time the master of the house cometh, at evening, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping, or unprepared. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. Yeah, he's saying that to the first century people, and he knows that they're going to be preaching that to everybody. I mean, you read the whole New Testament, they all are kind of pointing to the fact that this is a imminent thing, that Jesus is coming back. James 5:7-9. You can't refute that. I'm sorry. John 21:20-23. You can't really refute that. Matthew 16:27-28. Also, I believe it's Mark 8:35, the very last verse of Mark 8, and then also Mark 9:1, which to me should be the last verse of Mark 8. I'm sorry, but it's the Lord's word, and he doesn't lie. Peter calls them literally the blessed generation. I believe they're literally the blessed generation because, one, they got to see Jesus physically the first time, and because in their lifetime he came the second time. And then they are the ones that got to rule and reign. When you read Mark 4, he says, I believe it's verses 30-35. Let me pull it up. Because this could be a whole study in and of itself of Mark 4. 26-32. Especially verse 29. When the fruit is brought forth, immediately he putteth in the sickle, because the harvest is come. The harvest comes as soon as the fruit is ready. James 1:18 says they are the first fruits. Revelation 14 says the 144,000, I believe it's verse 4, that they are the first fruits. And then they get harvested. The harvest at the end of the age, the old covenant age into the new covenant age, with the destruction of the temple. It just makes sense once you understand that Jesus was speaking to them and not us, and that we have this account so that we can know what time we're in. That's why the Bible is preserved, and that's why the Bible is beautiful. When you understand that if the first fruits weren't harvested, then Jesus lied when he says in verse Mark 4:29 that immediately the fruit would be harvested, and the harvest comes right at the second coming, like we just read right here. 26 and 27 is the second coming and harvest. They're kind of connected there. To say that, oh man, that's another study for another day. Let's leave it there. We've been going for 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes. So let's just say, I hope this was edifying. I hope you learned something. We can do Luke's and Matthew's as well, but it's saying the same exact things. We can do that another day. I think the next time I'll do a breakdown of Revelation chapter 13, if that is helpful. I've been thinking about that one. Also, we're going to just do a whole study on this. I don't see another way that we're anywhere but the little season of Satan. The evidence is just in our face everywhere. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. I hope you know, if you didn't learn anything, or if you already knew all this stuff, that it was maybe a refresher course. If you have any additional information or any additional connections or anything like that, please leave them down below. Would love to hear them. But with that, I say thank you for watching. God bless, and take care. Bye-bye.